Good morning, beloved. Welcome to Conspiracies and Milk with your girl, Smoking Lioness. Today is Wednesday, I believe the 21st of July. And today begins a series of conspiracies that actually turned out to be true. And the first topic of this series that we're going to talk about, which begins today, is going to be weather manipulation. Yes, indeed, it's going to be weather manipulation. I know a lot of you don't believe in it. I know a lot of you think that that's far-fetched, but simple research can show you that it's an actual thing. And so true, in fact, that there was an act signed, a treaty signed. Let's go find this here. So yeah, that's what we're going to be diving into today. And without further ado, let's get into this. Environmental Modification Convention. Okay. The Environmental Modification Convention, the ENMOD, ENMOD, formerly the Convention on the Prohibition of Military or any other hostile use of environmental modification techniques, is an international treaty prohibiting the military or other hostile use of environmental modification techniques having widespread, long-lasting, or severe effects. It opened for signature on the 18th of May, 1977 in Geneva and entered into force on the 5th of October, 1978. The convention bans weather warfare, which is the use of weather modification techniques for the purposes of inducing damage or destruction. The Convention on Biological Diversity of 2010 would also ban some forms of weather modification or geoengineering. Many states do not regard this as a complete ban on the use of herbicides in warfare, such as Agent Orange, but it does require case-by-case consideration. Now, why would they need this? It's because they know. And that one little article from Wikipedia, that one's from Wikipedia. That's a simple search on weather modification. It'll bring that up. So you got to ask yourself, if they can control the weather, what's really happening in our world, right? Because this year alone, we won't even talk about 2020 and before that. This year alone, in the springtime, at the very end of spring, we got a magical snow day, right? And it killed all the crops for spring. All the farmers, even myself, we all had to replant everything because the frost killed everything that we had planted, right? Then, after that, we got magical rain days that flooded all the replanted stuff, damaging crops again, okay? Then, most recently, we had that atrocious heat wave. That heat wave obliterated 60% of many crops up here. The main one being the pea crops, I believe. And I kind of knew that was going to happen because I grow peas, and mine died right away. Like, there was no saving them. There was nothing I could do. It was just not going to work. It was very, very frustrating. Anyway, so if they can do that kind of stuff, you got to ask yourself, what are they doing? Is that truly what they're doing here? Are they using the weather to attack us? Are they using the weather to control us? Are they using the weather to make sure that you cannot live off the land? And if you're sitting there rolling your eyes at me like most people do when I speak, if you're sitting there rolling your eyes when I speak about this weather modification, then you are just not informed. And it's that simple. You just haven't come out of your bubble, out from under your rock, to actually discover things for yourself. You only bank on everything that's told to you on mainstream radio, news, movies, everything else. And beloved, I'm telling you, it is time to come out. Come out of her, my people. Get out of the world. Start paying attention. And I'm going to tell you why. So, let's go back, all the way back to 1915. Charles Hatfield, rainmaker or con man? When the city of San Diego hired Charles Hatfield to fix the devastating drought of 1915, they got more than they bargained for. Right? What would you do if you were facing the worst drought in history? As you watched crops wither, food become scarce, and even drinking water starting to dry up, you might be tempted to go to the extreme lengths to bring in the rain. That's what the city of San Diego did during the drought of 1915. In desperation, they hired a man named Charles Hatfield, who claimed he could make it rain, and they got more than they bargained for. Who was Charles Hatfield? Charles Hatfield was a man of many pursuits, but he made a name for himself as a rainmaker. His career started around the beginning of the 20th century, with a secret recipe of 23 chemicals that he claimed could attract water. 23? What's up with that number 23? 23 chemicals to make rain. 23 flavors in Dr. Pepper. 23, the number 23 with Jim Carrey. Anyways, there goes the conspiracy side of my brain. So 23 chemicals that he claimed could attract water. An early example of pseudoscience of cloud seeding, which has been tested but never proven to work. Actually, it has since been proven to work. By 1904, Hatfield started to make a name for himself. Ranchers in the West paid him to call in the rains with his secret chemical concoction. In many cases, it appeared that Hatfield was successful. Wherever he went, the rains followed, and he soon had a following that believed he was truly a rainmaker. This led to a $10,000 contract in the Yukon Territory in 1906. Hatfield was supposed to bring rain to the Klondike goldfields. Instead, Hatfield took the money and ran, leaving the Klondike high and dry, literally. The 1915 San Diego drought. In 1915, the city of San Diego was in the midst of a drought, and it was willing to do just about anything to bring back the rains. They heard tales of this rain man, Charles Hatfield, so they enlisted his help to fill the reservoir with rainwater. Hatfield was so confident he could bring the rain to the parched city that he secured a deal but agreed only to accept money for each inch of rain that he produced. $1,000 per inch to be exact, up to 50 inches. For the council, this was the perfect deal. If Hatfield was a charlatan and produced no rain, they didn't have to pay. And if he did produce all the rain that he claimed he could, it would be a small price to pay compared to the devastation that the drought was causing. The deal was sealed verbally. Hatfield never put ink to paper. Hatfield sprang into action, and on January 1st, 1916, he and his brother Joel built a tower for their concoction at the Morena Reservoir and allowed the mysterious chemicals to evaporate into the air. Much to the delight of everyone involved, the rain started 5 days later. From drought to flood, and they did not stop. By January 10th, severe rains moved in that drenched the San Diego area. More rain fell between January 14th and 18th, causing river flooding that washed away bridges and railroads. By January 27th, dams overflowed, taking homes, roads, and everything else in their path with them. Then the lower Otay Dam broke, causing a massive flood that claimed roughly 20 lives. Despite epic destruction, Hatfield considered the deluge of water a success. The city council, however, was furious. Flood damages had risen to about $3.5 million, and they were refusing to pay Hatfield. Unfortunately, since Hatfield never signed a contract, there was little that anyone could do. Hatfield fought to collect his money in an ordeal that lasted until 1938, with 2 courts deciding that the rains were an act of God. Hatfield nor the city ever received a penny in the matter. Funny that the courts would say it was an act of God. However, they absolutely deny there is a God. So that's one thing. Now, why do you think that is? What I think, and I'm just going to come up with my own little theory based on this one article. Now, I'm not going to dive into any more about this particular article. This was just brought up as a way to show you guys, hey, this is an actual thing, and this is the beginning of the 1900s, okay? So they've been knowing for about 100 years how to manipulate and modify the weather, okay? And you should be disturbed by things like that, because it means that they're deliberately causing all this flooding in Brazil and Germany and China. They're deliberately causing such intense heat to start fires. It's crazy, and everybody should be mad about it. Now let's move on to something called Operation Popeye. Now, weather modification should go hand in hand with Operation Popeye. Now, this is going to be from Popular Science, popsci.com. The article I was reading about Charles Hatfield can be found on the farmersalmanac.com if you wanted to look into that for yourself and read more into that. You can go ahead and do that. So with Operation Popeye, the U.S. government made weather an instrument of war. As geoengineering projects soar, the declassified project is newly relevant. Now, this article is from March 20th, 2018. It was a seasonably chilly afternoon in 1974 when Senators Claiborne Pell, a Democratic from Rhode Island, and Clifford Case, a Republican from New Jersey, strode into the chambers of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations for a classified briefing. While the meeting was labeled top secret, the topic at hand was rather mundane. They were there to discuss the weather. More specifically, Pell, the chairman of the new defunct Subcommittee for Oceans and International Environment, and his colleagues were about to learn the true extent of a secret 5-year-old cloud seeding operation meant to lengthen the monsoon season in Vietnam, destabilize the enemy, and allow the United States to win the war. Though it cycled through several names in its history, Operation Popeye stuck. Its stated objective, to ensure Americans won the Vietnam War, was never realized, but the revelation that the U.S. government played God with weather-altering warfare changed history. The Nixon administration distracted, denied, and it seems outright lied to Congress. But enterprising reporters published damning stories about rain being used as a weapon, and the Pentagon Papers dripped classified details like artificial rain. Eventually, the federal government would declassify its Popeye documents, and international laws aimed at preventing similar projects would be on the books. But the public would more or less forget it ever happened. Given the rise of geoengineering projects, both from municipal governments and private companies, some experts believe Popeye is newly relevant. Most travel agents would recommend planning your visit to Vietnam roughly between the months of November and April. Prices tend to jump during so-called high season, but it's the only surefire way to avoid the rain, and boy, is there rain. Between roughly May and October, the mercury rises to 90 degrees, and the humidity can hit 90%. Heavy with water and churned by reversing monsoon winds, the northern metropolis of Hanoi typically receives 8.2 inches of rain in July alone, while Ho Chi Minh City in the south, where the monsoon hits a little later, racks up an average of 11 inches each September. Why am I bringing this up, you guys? Because back in the 1960s, Vietnam's rainfall patterns weren't the concern of American tourists so much as the American military. When preliminary tests for Operation Popeye began in October of 1966, under President Lyndon B. Johnson, the Vietnam War had been underway for over a decade. Though still a decade away from its somber conclusion, and more than 8,000 Americans had already died with traditional methods failing, the U.S. government decided to look into the skies. The close monitoring of troop and truck traffic along routes where rain had fallen verified beyond any doubt the naturally adverse effects of rainfall and accumulated soil moisture on the enemy's logistic effort. Lieutenant Colonel Ed Soyster told Senators Pell and Case, according to the declassified notes from the 1974 meeting, Operation Popeye, he continued, intended to further ruin roads, jam rivers, and extend the amount of time swaths of Vietnam weren't traversable. Excuse me. I get fumbled around my words. So I'm not going to continue reading from this, but one little thing says the cloud seeding process can be done from an airplane or with a generator on the ground. Huh. Really? Because all these planes, the cloud seeding process can be done from an airplane or with a generator on the ground. That means they can actually do it. That means, all these planes. So if you look at the sky, there's always like this film, like a foggy film covering our skies. You don't see blue, beautiful skies anymore. You see all this film. You see fake clouds I'm not talking about the big, fluffy, pretty ones, God-made clouds. I'm talking about these films and these little poofs everywhere. They do control the weather. And you got to ask yourself, why? Why are they controlling the weather? Why would they do that? And why isn't anyone talking about it if this is a real thing? If this is something our government can do, which it is, why aren't we discussing this more? Because it would seem to me that if the weather is something they can control, why are we having a drought? Why is other parts of the country under siege with rain? Oh, it's because they want to convince you that you are the problem. They want to convince you that mankind has destroyed the earth so bad that we're causing global warming. Global warming is a trick. Yes, things are happening, but they're making it happen. And I'm sorry if you don't want to believe that. The government was never put in place to assist you in having a better life, beloved. They were put in place to condition you, to control you, and eventually take you over. And you must, at this point, be asking yourself, why? Why on earth would this be happening? Well, because we're in a biblically fallen world. It was written that all this was going to happen, and it all boils down and goes back to that. They are putting in place a sinister plan, and for the past several years I've watched crops die and neighborhoods be obliterated, and nobody's questioning anything. They can do this, and they have been doing this, and there's proof. And so I've dropped a few seeds with you guys today, and that was my intention. I just want to get you guys thinking outside the box. If they could have ever manipulated the weather, they're still doing it to this day. And you need to get mad about it. You need to start letting your people know that, hey, no, this is something they can really do. And they are. And they will continue. May God bless you guys with open eyes and ears. I thank you for hanging out with me this morning and letting me fill you up with some of the truth that I've discovered. And until next time, you guys have a blessed day.